All right. Well, next we will hear from California, and we have Joanna Fisher with CDFA. Take it away, Joanna.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. Today I'll be talking about California's spotted lanternfly preventative efforts. And apologies, I've got some little things going on here. Okay, so let me get into this. So the first thing I want to go over is just what is at risk as far as spotted lanternfly. Why do we care about this pest in California? And the primary reason is because of our grape industry. We have grapes that are grown on approximately 828,000 acres of land in the state with cash receipts of $5.64 billion in 2024. And this doesn't even count the impact of the industry as in terms of jobs and tourism and all of those different factors where it goes beyond just the cash value of the crop. So it's a really huge industry in California. It's a very large industry in the US, and California produces about 80% of the US wine production. As we heard in talks yesterday, particularly big shout out to Dr. Holly Shugart, there are other key crops grown in California, which we know spotted lanternfly will feed on. Again, little hard to tell at this point what the impact might be on these crops, but just the fact that it will feed on citrus, avocado, hops, and almonds, particularly citrus, is a concern because California has very large industries for especially citrus, avocado, and almonds. And you have the impacts on, in our natural areas. And of course, it's also a really bad nuisance pest that could impact tourism, homeowners, and so on. So anyway, we're very concerned about this pest. This is certainly a pest that we do not want in California. And so we are doing our best to take preventative measures to prevent its introduction and establishment in the state. And those efforts start with a statewide spotted lanternfly survey. So this survey has been conducted in the state since 2021. Unfortunately, we did not receive federal funding for this in 2025, so it was fully state funded last year. I'm not sure, we are hoping to receive federal funding for it in 2026. If it's not federally funded, I don't know the status of us being able to continue the survey. So last year, the survey was conducted between August to October. We got started a little late because of operational limitations. And really what we're trying to do is target the survey when about 50% of the adults would have emerged in a particular area. So starting kind of midway through adult emergence based on that pest cast model, which you probably are all pretty familiar with. And so this is what we tried to do, since we obviously cannot survey everywhere in the state, is we try to select sites that we think will be high risk for spotted lanternfly introduction. We also work to make sure that we're not just going back to the same sites year after year. We want to mix up which sites we go to. So we use a variety of tools to do this. One of them is a high-risk pathway analysis created by iEcolabs. Big shout out to Temple University and Matt Helmus group. We use quite a few of the tools available through his lab, and also information on locations that are ranked as being high risk. Pretty much our transportation corridors, many of the similar high-risk locations that you've heard about throughout the summit are types of sites that we target. We also have additional information coming in from our border stations on what we call our 008A shipments. So these are shipments coming from areas of the East Coast that have spongy moth infestations. Many of these states also have spotted lanternfly infestations, not all, but several. So these shipments and their corresponding locations are helpful for us to determine maybe areas receiving large amount of goods from East Coast states that have spotted lanternfly infestations, and high-risk areas around ports and rail yards when possible. And then we partner closely with our county departments of agriculture, and they also, know their county as well, and will choose high-risk sites in their areas. So this year we had 14 counties where the survey was conducted. The map, as you can see here, shows survey sites dating back to 2023 in yellow, then 2024 in green, and 25 in blue. So again, we are trying to go to different sites, kind of spread out our efforts as much as we can. And this year we partnered with 14 counties and had a very successful survey. In total, 828 sites were surveyed. We also try to target areas where there's tree of heaven present or wild grapevines. And we do have some maps showing some tree of heaven locations, but it's not complete. So what type of sites were surveyed in 25? The sites included airports, campgrounds, deep water ports, marinas, distributors, shipping companies, fairgrounds, amusement parks, residences, nurseries, landscapers, pod storage facilities. Those would be some of those 008A facilities, moving companies, rail yard, rail spur. This would be on publicly accessible land near rail yards and rail spurs, truck stop, rest areas, warehouses, industrial. So again, really trying to capture all of those high-risk sites. In addition to our survey, and the good news is we did not find spotted lanternfly. So we are hopeful that we do not currently have spotted lanternfly in California. So in addition to conducting the statewide survey, we are also taking other actions to prepare because we realize it's likely just a matter of time before spotted lanternfly ends up in California. I mean, especially with an infestation around the rail yard in Chicago, which rail cars go directly from there to California. So we're very concerned about especially the movement of egg masses on pods, storage containers, vehicles, rail cars, et cetera, into the state. So of course, we gave this an A rating from our primary state entomologist. We have an action plan that's been developed and also distributed to our partners in the West. And it details actions that we would take if we did detect spotted lanternfly in California. And we have a state exterior quarantine. So the state exterior quarantine regulates the movement of goods and materials from states infested with spotted lanternfly. And it details what should be done to ensure that goods and materials, and this includes movement of outdoor furniture as well. So it can apply to homeowners, which is a good thing to keep in mind who are moving goods across state. So, and it details how to safeguard against spotted lanternfly, either when moving through states that have infestations or how to ensure that goods and materials are free of spotted lanternfly coming from spotted lanternfly infested states and areas before entering California. So if this applies to you, I definitely recommend checking out our website, reading through the quarantine guidelines, and reaching out to us if you have any additional questions about how to comply with those guidelines. And apologies for my little animation that I had to click through. In addition to this, we are also have conducted quite a bit of training for our county regulatory staff, and most of the survey work done last year was with our county regulatory staff. And that includes not only how to survey that includes how to identify spotted lanternfly, tree of heaven, how to survey for spotted lanternfly. So it's a really good way to ensure that all of our partners within the state, know about this pest and are informed. We've also conducted public outreach and education. There's a Master Gardeners unit that's been developed in partnership with UC Cooperative Extension that Master Gardeners can go through. We also conduct air cargo inspections and border station inspections. We have 16 stations along the California border where goods and vehicles are inspected as they come into the state. And kind of a fun new thing that's planned for this year are some tabletop exercises, which I'll talk some more about in just a minute. For our high-risk aircraft inspections, this is really piggybacking off of existing work that we're already doing for the Japanese beetle. So aircraft coming from states that have Japanese beetle infestations, a subset of those planes, cargo planes, when they land at California airports, inspectors will go onto those planes and they will physically look for and inspect them for Japanese beetle to ensure that the aircrafts are complying with all of the regulations to mitigate Japanese beetle contamination on those aircraft. And while they're there, they're also looking for spotted lanternfly. So last year, we actually collected 8 dead adults from 7 airports. So they are ending up on the planes. We, however, think it's very unlikely that this would be a pathway where we would have, where we could potentially have an infestation enter the state simply because the travel, the adults are not feeding and they desiccate quite quickly. And so it's very unlikely that they'd end up alive and able to fly when they arrive on these aircraft in California. So that's a good thing. Now, of course, border stations, that's a completely different scenario because here we're really concerned about the movement of egg masses because they can survive being transported long distances. So we already have inspections that we're conducting at the border stations for spongy moth. And we've also expanded that to include spotted lanternfly. And so far we found all life stages, including egg masses, which of course are the ones that we're really concerned about. And in fact, in 2024, these images, the images showing kind of that weird metal thing and the close-up of the egg mass, that was all egg masses that were found on this giant metal art sculpture that was traveling from an infested state to Sonoma County. Those intercepted at the border. Inspectors at the border found egg masses. They scraped and washed the sculpture before and went to Sonoma County. And then once it reached Sonoma County, it was once again checked and additional egg masses were found and removed. And then follow-up inspections in the area were conducted and nothing was found. But this is just an example of how easy it is for an article to be transported from an infested state right into the heart of our wine country. And if it hadn't been caught at the border station, who knows what would have happened. So in 2025 alone, 4 adults and 2 egg masses were intercepted at the borders. And egg masses were found on fifth wheel trailer and military equipment. So quite a range of different materials where we're finding these insects. Now, getting into one of the new things we're going to be doing in 2025, we're going to have some tabletop exercises. So the plan for this is to really test out our action plan and our ability to respond to a potential spotted lanternfly introduction. So we've created 6 different scenarios to challenge our response. And essentially, we throw in the kitchen sink of everything horrible that could happen. The worst case scenarios for finding a spotted lanternfly in California. Things like, what if you found a spotted lanternfly in the middle of a giant event and you had to try to regulate the movement of vehicles in an area during like a very busy weekend event? What if it was found in an area that's challenging to regulate, where it's near a rail yard or on tribal land or, in a remote location with rocky terrain? How would we handle a tricky PR scenario or an area where there's a lot of resistance to government intervention and involvement? So we're trying, and lots of sensitive species, regulated species. So we have kind of all of these different real areas in California where we are going to pretend that we found a spotted lanternfly and we're going to get together in person for a 1 to 2 day event. And that will include our partners from USDA, Customs and Border Protection, as well as our county agricultural commissioner staff. And we're going to say, okay, what if we found spotted lanternfly in this scenario? And as the day goes by, we're going to throw more kind of wrenches into it where, okay, everything is going smoothly, but now, maybe a resident gets really upset and they call the media in, and now you've got to deal with, the media or different kind of challenging things. So again, the overall outcome of this is to really identify holes in our response and bolster our ability to respond effectively if spotted lanternfly is introduced. Because just with the way this pest is moving, we know it's just a matter of time, likely before it ends up in California. So that's all I have for you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Joanna. There was one question in the Q&A, and since we have time, I'll just read it to you and let you roll with it. So, does California have an extensive tree heaven population? And also, do your surveys pay attention to where tree heaven location data, um, or pay attention to the tree of heaven location data when choosing where to survey?
So the answer is yes. We have a very extensive tree of heaven population. Unfortunately, it is not difficult to find tree of heaven in the state. As much as we can, we do pay attention to it. It's challenging to know where it all is. So we have some kind of partial maps that have some locations. In the most cases, we're more allowing our more local county agricultural commissioner staff. So we essentially send them, here's a list of high risk locations based on our analysis. And then because they know their counties really well, we allow them to then further narrow or add to the list based on their more local knowledge of where Tree of Heaven is located and other high risk sites. So as much as we can, we do end up having some areas that our inspectors show up to and there's no Tree of Heaven, and that's kind of how it goes, but as much as we can.
Thank you. And there was another one that popped up. When do you anticipate holding the tabletop exercises? I don't know if this is someone maybe from California looking to participate or just out of curiosity, but
We're hoping soon. I don't have an exact date or anything like that, but we've done most of the kind of background work. So we have our scenarios written, we have our maps created, which are pretty cool. So yeah, don't have an exact date, but sometime this year.
sounds good. Well, that's all I'm seeing. So, appreciate it, Joanna. You're off the hook. And are you going to be around if there are any other questions that pop up?
Yeah, I'll be
Perfect.
around for
Thank
a
you.
bit.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. So, we can keep moving forward and head up the coast a little bit to Washington. Josh, are you ready?
Hang in there. Let me get my PowerPoint slides and
Yeah,
my.
sorry to get you a couple minutes early. Just wanted to make sure you're good to go.
No,
So,
that's perfect. No, that
all
was a
right.
great
So
talk.
up next we have Josh Milnes with Washington Department of Agriculture. So Washington State Department of Agriculture, excuse me. You're doing the same thing I did earlier. If you can,
There we
there you
go.
go. All right.
Hey.
I got your back here. All right, take it away, Josh.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Just a little bit of background. My name is Josh Milnes. I'm with Washington State Department of Agriculture here in Washington State. I've been overseeing the spotted lanternfly survey programs. I will say with great excitement, we don't have spotted lanternfly up here. But really, what I'm hoping to convey in this meeting or this presentation is to kind of the um, strategies that Washington State is adapting to for in response for this up and coming pest. It's kind of an opinion we've had up here, which is it's not a question of is it coming, but when is it coming? Some of the topics I'll quickly go over. I'm not going to spend too much time on the basics of spotted lanternfly biology. Many of you guys know that quite well, so I won't bore you with that. But we'll quickly go over some tips I found with funding acquisition, lanternfly action plan that we've built. We'll be discussing quickly over tree of heaven removal, visual surveys, eDNA collections that we've been collaborating with researchers on the East Coast, as well as host plant surveying with Julie Urban's team, and of course, some of what we've learned from working with rail yards. Of course, the pest of interest is the spotted lanternfly, Lacroma telecetula. Again, what makes this insect concerning for us here in the north is that we have a very large hop population and grape and other specialty crops as well. And this will be a pest that will very likely be able to adapt to those if it was to find its way here. That leads me, of course, to this slide. You guys have seen multiple variations of this slide. What I'm trying to get across is that what we're most concerned about up north is the egg stage. The lanternfly can lie dormant in this stage for several months. Very easy for it to hitchhike its way across the East Coast into our neck of the woods. And of course, that's what makes this insect really concerning is that it is capable of hitchhiking on laying its eggs on multiple substrates. It particularly likes rusty colored surfaces, which of course you'll find in this photo here. We've got quite a lot of rail that comes into our state, and that's been a chief concern. You can see here this rail car that are on a rail spike that are just they've been sitting there for a couple of weeks now. Last year when I took this photo, you'll notice behind the rail cars there's actually a grove of tree of heaven, Atlantis altissima. That's the tree we've been really concerned, and we've been cataloging that tree here in Washington State. It is considered a Class C weed, so it's everywhere. Um, Another photo just to point out is that here you can see the tree of heaven is overhanging on um, a semi truck facility that is being used, has been parked right next to the actual grove with overlapping leaves on the actual trailer. Interestingly enough, this is a great way for lanternflies to sneak on board and be pulled over all the way over to the lower Yakima Valley, where a lot of our industries are concerned. We mentioned earlier rail. A lot of other ports of entry are concerning to us. Here's where my complicated animations will stop because if I try to impress you with more, you'll realize very quickly I have no idea. But but anyways, the point of the matter is that it just takes a couple of days for this insect to come over here from Chicago over to the Pacific Northwest. This is where we're having some concerns. Kind of like my colleague was saying down in California, we're focusing a lot of our surveying near the borders. But really, I would like to take you guys back to 2023. This is when we started developing an action plan. It's important when you're doing a survey, and many of the surveys that we've conducted is getting a firm foundation, collaborating with multiple agencies, specifically with Washington Invasive Species Council. We co-built this survey action plan. This action plan is basically the blueprint of what is Washington State going to do if lanternfly when lanternfly shows up. Like I said, lanternfly is not in our state. I'd like to keep it that way. But this really was a great spearhead for pushing more knowledge and understanding of what should we do when lanternfly shows. A lot of that also spurred into moving into documenting Tree of Heaven. And this is where it becomes interesting, especially from from a state regulator perspective. WSDA primarily focused on a couple of objectives. Building early external support through education. I can't tell you how important that is from a regulator's perspective, is educating not just the community, but from the legal perspective, from the agencies within, working with just educating the governor's staff and the governor himself too. Identifying key impacted industries. We really focused on looking at the especially crops, also rail. We developed surveying using GIS. We mapped out Tree of Heaven. We also have been pushing hard in developing surveys for doing trapping as well as visual surveys for spotted lanternfly. This has led into a lot of work building trust with the inner offices, especially with the Office of Financial Management, where we've been lobbying for finances to go and do these projects. And again, this is where a lot of education, especially for those states that don't have spotted lanternfly, I really recommend building, those friendships with the inner departments. Um, Educating your legislators is going to be an essential component for getting funding for rapid response. I'll go through. Fortunately, I can't go into more detail in this due to the limitation of talk, but if you have more questions, please email me. Again, When it comes down to the concern, Washington State has quite a lot of specialty crops that are vulnerable to this pest if it was to come into the valleys. I'd like to turn your attention to the dotted lines trickling all over this map of Washington. Those are the rail lines that have integrated themselves from Seattle to Spokane, all the way down to Vancouver in the southern region. If you look at the colors, there's a yellow color, there's a purple and green. The yellow dots indicate tree of heaven. Grape is, of course, our vineyards, and hops is our green coloration on this map. So again, I really want to point that rails are trickling as well as the tree of heaven, great host material to spread the species. WSDA has been really focusing on building maps, building the data, collecting data, and building data banks. We use ArcGIS. We've got a crack team who's been really helpful in developing this data and holding on to it. And we survey throughout the state. You can see where in areas of high traffic, ports of entry, Tree of Heaven seems to do very well in those areas. And of course, in central Washington, you'll see near the arid habitats, there's plenty of Tree of Heaven. Yakima Valley is one of the largest apple producers in the state. And so, again, protecting these commodities is essential. We actually contract out with the local weed boards, noxious weed boards, for tree of heaven eradication. We've been funding them, and I should point out Klickitat, Clark, Yakima, Benton, Franklin, Walla Walla, and Spokane County for the work that they've been doing. We've worked with them closely to go out, remove tree of heaven, and also training them through regulatory trainings to educate them on, what to expect for tree of heaven removal. And of course, this also implies looking at maybe moving out the seed banks first. I mean, that's essential. That's something that we've been focusing on the female trees, getting those out first before we start looking into removing the males. And of course, we will go back and remove those as well as eventually. But again, getting those seed banks, that's key. This, of course, has led to a survey with our program in May of 2025. I should be very clear when I say Oregon Department of Agriculture announced a possible spotted lanternfly detection in Portland, Oregon. It was there was a possible detection in a park, not that very far from Vancouver, Washington, and so just over the river. Washington was very quick to respond with a rapid survey. We really put a lot of effort to monitoring the Columbia River down to the Tri-Cities up into Spokane. We've been using very similar to what California is working with Ecolabs, working with Matt Helms's team to use that as a useful tool to help support our programs, looking for new high-risk sites. We are also trying to survey at sites, new sites every year. Last year, we placed out 40 circle traps, and we were able to take over 2,640 visuals. What constitutes a visual really is just going out to a tree of heaven, inspecting the actual tree itself. We have a sweep net. We'll actually test the actual canopy. This has led to interesting discoveries of how much tree of heaven we've got, and it's always despairing to see it. But again, doing these visuals are helping our stakeholders, especially the stakeholders in the specialty crop industries like hops and grapes. They've been really supportive of us doing these programs, and this is where we've been able to adapt. You can see here on this map, we've got a whole bunch of blue dots. Those blue dots indicate visuals. So we've been using the rail yards kind of as, or the rail lines as a guide to look around for spotted lanternfly. We go through the ports of entry, like our seaports near the Seattle area district, up into Bellingham, north near the Canadian border, and of course south of the I-5 corridor to Vancouver. Traps have been placed in key areas where we would suspect lanternfly might come in. So we had traps in Spokane County, Yakima County, and of course Vancouver and Clark County, excuse me. During the actual trapping surveys, we've also got involved working with researchers on the East Coast. Shout out to Dr. Scotty Yang and Dr. Tracy Linsky. We've had some really awesome opportunities working on collecting ants, using ants as a way to detect spotted lanternfly. Typically, when we are out there doing our visual inspections, we'll collect these ants using an aspirator and our sweep nets. Then the ant is processed with Dr. Yang's lab looking for eDNA and the gut content analysis of these insects. And so, again, these are the type of tools from a regulator's perspective that I get really excited about. These are easy to use, quick to have a quick turnaround um, from a rapid response perspective. So, again, this is something that I'm finding to be very useful. And I recommend others to also jump on board on this type of um, technology. I think that this is a great way to get quick responses. We've also been working with Julie Urban's lab in Penn State, looking at alternative host plant material that could potentially spread lanternfly, looking at native Washington plants. We've been collecting samples actually this year. We started last year doing this. And so, again, this is a very exciting project, I think, that will be very useful for multiple states as well to adapt to. Getting native vegetation that could be suspect material for these invasive species like lanternfly, but I also open the door for other invasives as well. So documenting lanternfly doing cage experiments, choice experiments, looking at the potential of lanternfly feeding on our native vegetation. Could they survive on large sagebrush? I really hope they can't. It would be a bit of a game over for us, with our more arid habitats or more semi-arid habitats in eastern Washington, where all of our agriculture is, a majority of our agriculture, I should point out. And so, again, this is something that we've been really focusing on getting samples of our native vegetation, shipping them over to Julie Urban's lab and planting those and exposing them to lanternfly for feeding, seeing female fecundity, looking at whether or not they'll be able to survive. And so, really at the end of the day, I'm really hoping people will see that, developing tools so that regulators like myself can use them is essential. And so I really applaud everyone on the East Coast for all the work they're doing. So this is going to be, I think, a very effective method for helping states that don't have spotted lanternfly or future other invasives. We've been working also with host range testing with Dr. Hannah Broadley with Doranus sinicus. This is a really cool parasitic wasp. It's exciting to hear the progress that her lab is working on getting the permits for the eventual release of this insect. It is a small parasitoid that attacks the spotted lanternfly nymph stage. This was something that we were really interested in here in Washington State. We were very pro biocontrol. Um, One of the things that we were looking at is looking at collecting some of our native um, tree hoppers and plant hoppers that could be potential insects that these parasitic wasps might go after. We're hoping they won't. But part of these host range tests required, testing or exposing these parasitic wasps to the actual native species of our state. So last year we started in July. We worked out over and checked 55 sites. Many of the sites we focused on the west side of the Cascade Mountain Range. Then we climbed all the way up towards the northern border of the Okanagan County and the east side. Actually, didn't find a whole lot of these insects until recently. We were able to collect Scalopus paradox, Platypodus vendata. These are two of our targets that we were able to find and actually collect. And so the good news is this year we'll be collecting more nymphs. Last year we were unable to find nymphs, but we did find the habitat where they're in. So that will be an exciting result. Kind of a side quest with our Scolopus paradox. We actually found some Stripseptera, a new species of possible new species of Stripseptera. Been working with some researchers down in California to identify this. No, excuse me, not California, Mexico, I meant to say. So I don't know, kind of a side quest, kind of exciting. But again, this is something that we do think that when lanternfly shows up, we really would like to be using Durainus sinicus as a biological to control to help suppress this insect when it, comes in our state. Hopefully it never does, but you can't be too careful. Washington has also been focusing on education, especially when we're dealing with rail yards. We had the opportunity last year in October to attend a rail summit where we met up with representatives with BNSF, and then the Palouse River Cooley City PCC rail system, now owned by the Department of Transportation, or Department of Transportation. And so we're building relationships with them right now, building contracts, also building opportunities to collaborate with putting weed boards onto their lands to their rail yards to help hopefully remove tree of heaven. Learning a lot about how to adapt to these industries. I'm fairly new to this myself, and so training flaggers, educating the flaggers that come when they're going out in the field with us to know kind of what to expect for tree of heaven removal. So again, early detection, I keep kind of harping on this, but I think it's so important that early detection is key. Again, our materials are everyone's always welcome to our materials. Lastly, we've been working on developing a reporting tools on our website for the community, and keep the community rather broad. Using this, this is one of those tools that we found, just seeing kind of what they're doing on the East Coast, we thought we'd adapt as well, using a system where people from our Washington state can actually report potential sightings of spotted lanternfly, and then the state. This is basically using a ArcGIS Survey 123. It's an easy system, and so again, trying to develop tools that help our community communicate with our community and help with rapid response. Lastly, I'd just like to give a shout out to some of our trappers who are actively and proactively been pushing for tree of heaven removal long before I actually came in. Jeff Kissenich was one of those guys who really last year he pulled out, or excuse me, treated over 4,958 tree of heaven in Clark County alone. Just to give you, an idea how many there are. It's overwhelming in some of our counties. But again, this is what we're after here: collaboration amongst agencies, interagencies, and getting a proactive approach in removing host material that could potentially spread lanternfly before it has a chance to establish. So again, like I said, we don't have lanternfly here in Washington State, and we kind of want to keep it that way. So again, last year, Jeff was one of our first trappers to go out in the field surveying. He'll be continuing on this year, and we'll be expanding our trapping range with more traps out in the field. So, again, just wanted to say thank you so much for all those who've been working with us. And if you have any questions, please here's my contact information. Give me a call. That's everything. Any questions?
Thank you, Josh. Hey, I know Julie's upset that she couldn't be on, but I wanted to kind of make a plug here real quick and say something that I imagine she may have been thinking or wanted to say herself, and it's come up in numerous conversations. But the last two presenters particularly kind of demonstrate the nexus of this bug and you know, Josh's presentation, I think he mentioned maybe three or four or maybe even five of the researchers that presented yesterday between Matt and Hannah and Scotty and Holly and Julie as well. Even earlier today, Rob mentioned Dr. Isaacs that's going to be presenting tomorrow. So just the interconnectivity of all the work that's being done from the academic and research field and
Mhm,
applying that
mhm.
to what's happening in the operational side of things, and not to mention all the work that's being done on the USDA side of things as well, is really kind of a driving factor and something that's been really neat to watch through the program and then as this program itself. So, um, I see something just came up in the Q&A for you. Let's see, was that for you, Josh? Oh, that's a comment from Gary. Okay. There were two questions that came in the chat real quick.
Cool.
Um, how was all the tree of heaven in Washington mapped? Was it a modeling or inventory survey? And then what funding sources supported your survey efforts? So if you can answer those real quickly,
That's a good question. Yeah.
yeah.
So we've got, I think I mentioned earlier, and if I haven't, my apologies, but we've got a crack team of GIS experts working for the state who have been helping us map that out using field maps. And so again, inventory is more, I think, we're in line where how we've been monitoring these tree of heaven. So what we'll do is we'll contract out with the noxious weed boards. They've gone out and done an amazing amount of tree of heaven removal, as well as mapping out the tree of heaven. And so again, baseline data has been essential, and I would honestly give credit to the noxious weed boards, for and their teams who have been giving us the data that we contracted out to them to collect. There was a part two of that question, and Scott, what was it? I'm sorry, I think funding. I think it was funding. Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. You're.
No, no, no. I was
Oh,
muted, so
okay.
you got it exactly right. Funding sources for the survey. Yep.
Well, a lot of that, gosh, I mentioned earlier education. A lot of our funding comes through the state, and so I mentioned earlier with tips of looking for funding in a state level. A lot of that was really through education, early onset. We had, my boss Sven and Greg Halbrick at the time. We're really working hard at getting, funding through the state line itself, and that came through a lot of outreach, especially with our stakeholders, in the industry. And so when we got our funding, it was really through the efforts of pushing through legislation. I really can't tell you how important that is getting that firm foundation, especially using the data that we collected with Tree of Heaven, getting that mapped out, and then showing legislators, hey, this is a problem. This is something that you probably should start investing finances for. We were able to convince the inner our regulators as well as the interagencies to really kind of come on board with us. And so, and I also would like to give a shout out to the industries like the hops and grape industries who really have been very supportive of this too. And so again, you've got to have a strong foundation with, I would say getting, on board using GIS, mapping out and showing it's not just you can't just verbally explain it to these because you got to get that data. So for us, it was, building years of an argument. And when the legislators did see that data, they were fairly convinced. And so again, a lot of our funding is through the state, and that funding has been used to contract out to the noxious weed boards. And so it's been I think, a very effective method. And so again, I hope that answers your question. I could talk more, but again, shoot me an email if you want more. I can give more, details.
No, it sounds good. Yep. Got your contact info up there still. We appreciate that. And just a gentle reminder to try to make sure to get your questions into the Q&A section as opposed to the chat section. So thank you. Um, With that, thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it. And we will be shifting over to South Carolina now. So if you haven't kind of caught the trend here, we had Illinois and Michigan early on, which was more the 3, 4 year olds. We got California and Washington that haven't found it yet. And now we're kind of shifting on down to South Carolina, who's one of the more recent additions to the group. So we have Matt Howle with Clemson. Take it away, Matt.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for having me on here. I did speak to the Spotted Lanternfly Summit 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, as one of the states who did not have Spotted Lanternfly yet. So I'm no longer representing that position. Um, just a little bit about us, real quick. I do work for Clemson University, but in South Carolina, um, my department at Clemson is our plant pest regulatory authority. So we are with Clemson and not with the Department of Ag. Um, so with that, let me tell you all a little bit about, I just plan to have a kind of a short update of our detection and the things that we have going on so far in South Carolina. If I can get my slots to change.
I was gonna say we don't have you in presenter mode right now either. At least I'm seeing it.
Oh, you're seeing the
The
sides and
slide bank
everything?
on the side, yeah. Yep.
I practiced
And
this
Josh,
the other.
just a quick note. I noticed you're not muted, Josh, so just in case something came up, but
Oh, thank you.
Hmm. Um, well, I practiced this the other day and it worked perfectly. You see my second slide now?
no, no. I had the same it literally was doing the same thing for me. So I don't yeah, try closing it out, going live, and then I think Jacob said yesterday that if you had it live in the queue and then brought it up, that would help.
But if I share my desktop instead of the screen, is it working?
No, it's still the same.
Well, I don't even see y'all anymore. I'll try one more time, and if we don't have slides, then we will survive. How about now?
Seeing your desktop.
Let me drag it into my desktop. You'll happen to see it in my desktop now?
Well, it's still the same format, but I would say, yeah, go ahead, proceed as you see fitting.
Did it change?
A little bit, yep.
All right. Well, I'll just carry on with what I have if it will change slides. Um, changing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we learned that we were in the Spotted Lanternfly Club and that we had an infestation in South Carolina. It happened to be over July 4th weekend in 2025. And we did have it came in from a report from the public from a pest control operator who recognized it, reported it to an extension agent who got in touch with us, and the phone calls began. Um, we did get that confirmed, and if you can see in my photos there, that is the original location where we first came to confirm spotted lanternfly infestation. And right behind those trees is a place with about 6 or 7 um, railroad tracks that kind of come together there where they park rail cars. So and it backed up to some businesses and some schools and some industrial areas in West Greenville, South Carolina. So in the city of Greenville, South Carolina, which we weren't particularly surprised about because we have spotted lanternfly in North Carolina. It was found in Georgia, and Greenville, South Carolina happens to be about halfway between Charlotte and Atlanta along a lot of the rail lines and along a lot of the interstate highways. Um, so to begin our response, we, like some other folks have talked about, we had a spotted lanternfly response plan or a draft of a response plan kind of in place for what we would do if and when spotted lanternfly was found in South Carolina. So we began to look at kind of what some of the steps were that we thought about doing. And we knew we needed to do a delimiting survey and try to figure out the extent of the infestation in order to use that information to kind of inform our decisions to, do some decision trees about how to proceed. Um, So after doing that delimiting um, in July and August, our team came together and we inspected visually, primarily visually, but also some with help of some North Carolina inspectors and detector dogs. Um, we had our delimiting information in a pretty good order. And the reality was we had two distinct infestations, one in that Greenville, South Carolina area, and one in a small town called Seneca, South Carolina, that is about 50 miles to the west of Greenville. So if you can see the map in my slide there, um, Seneca's here to the west, Greenville's here to the east, and Clemson University happens to be um, right here, kind of in between the two. So this was a local infestation for the Clemson staff. Um, Part of that reality was the Seneca infestation is quite small, and the Greenville infestation was relatively quite large and quite complicated. This is to zoom in to Seneca for you. There's the larger map to the left, and then the map you see that's zoomed in there is Seneca, South Carolina, which happens to be my hometown where I grew up. Um, but really, we were only able to find spotted lanternfly in this roughly 2 block area in the downtown part of Seneca, along the railroad areas. And these are also areas where there are several rail tracks and they change cars and occasionally leave cars for extended periods of time. They stack rail ties and that kind of thing. And they have a little depot building where the railroad uses for some of that kind of storage. Um, but as you can see, this is quite manageable. This is a very small area, and we did survey around it, looking at every ailanthus tree we could find in town surrounding there, and we're only finding infestation there in those within that 2 block area or so. Um, so given that, the decision trees that our department was going through, we knew that um, high risk areas for high risk movement, but also areas that were um, smaller and manageable, that were new satellite type infestations. Things like Seneca were places where we would probably really, if there were areas where we were going to concentrate management, then an area like Seneca is where we would do it. So throughout the fall and winter of 2025, I just want to let y'all know some of the things that our department has done so far and is ongoing as far as our response. One of the largest, most important things that we wanted to make sure that we were doing from the get-go was keep our industry in compliance primarily with California external quarantine. So our staff did a great job of putting together a spotted lanternfly compliance training that our nurserymen and folks doing transport business could access online through Clemson University, and that we could, verify who had completed trainings and that kind of thing. And then our nursery inspection staff was also able to get to all the nurseries in the state who do shipping of plant material out to California and put them under a compliance agreement that they will take the training and they'll do the appropriate measures. So a lot of our efforts have been in that compliance. Another one of our early efforts in that downtown Seneca area, before we did not, at the time, did not have any federal funding. And even if we had started our federal funding, we weren't in compliance with NEPA compliance in order to do funded treatments yet. So we were able to work with the city staff, and the city staff has a good relationship with the rail yards, and we're able to access all that property that we'd identified spotted lanternfly on. And the city decided to do some extra insecticide treatments where I had pointed out, or where our staff had pointed out, the spotted lanternfly infestations. Unfortunately, the only thing that they were really willing and able to do was mosquito misting that they're used to doing in their routine work. So that's the funny old photo of the fogger there. But the city did do some mosquito fogging treatments in the spotted lanternfly areas, but we did not see that being particularly effective on those adults that were out at that time. That was in August of 25. Um, so after that, we were able to work with um, the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Science at Clemson University with some of the more extension and research staff to have them place lampshade traps throughout that 2 block area in Seneca. And so there were roughly 30 lampshade traps that were placed last fall um, to hopefully provide a really good habitat for the spotted lanternflies to lay their egg masses, so we could capture a significant amount of egg masses in that area. So that's one of the pictures you see there of Tim Drake, our state entomologist, taking apart one of the spotted lanternfly lampshade traps. So we left those lampshade traps up until December and January, and then went to pull them off and destroyed all the egg masses. And then, of course, we did quite a lot of spotted lanternfly stomping, and during our inspection activities and during our delimiting survey, you see somebody's foot there with a lanternfly on it. Um, so that's the majority of the work that we have done and we got ongoing. Our department, like maybe others I've heard here, is not going to be involved in doing any insecticide treatments ourselves. We're not going to staff up and train up our staff to do treatments as some other states have. But we have asked for funding to do some targeted limited treatments with contractors. So we plan to facilitate those treatments through working with property owners in high risk areas or areas where we really think it's important to make sure treatments are done. Places like that Seneca infestation where we may be able to knock out a satellite infestation that's in its infancy. So um, we plan to work with folks to do some of that. But that's about all that we have done this year. My next slide is just like talking a little bit about the future. And I was also going to mention a little bit of a claim to fame that happened in South Carolina earlier this year. The second time we went out to remove lampshade traps was on January the 8th. And on one of our lampshade traps, we find what you see in this picture here, where egg masses had, where there had been a hatch and you had baby spotted lanternflies coming out and some early stage nymphs crawling around on our lampshade traps at a very early time of year, being January 8th. However, after talking with several folks about that, we don't think that it's a huge cause for alarm. We don't think that they're emerging quite that early in the South. Um, the particular lampshade trap that had the hatch on it was on a southwest facing slope, and it had no other trees around it, and it was in full sunlight. So we think there's microclimate type conditions there that had made it quite a bit warmer than the other surrounding lampshade traps, and that's why the egg masses on that one were hatching early. Um, but just to continue, our future, we want to monitor the spread. We have plans to continue surveying high risk areas, to use lampshade traps possibly as monitoring, to use circle traps to monitor to see if it comes up in some of our other cities that we might would expect it to come up with lots of Atlanthus and along the same rail lines. We're doing outreach and education, and like already described, we will be working with folks in certain situations to facilitate funded treatments, but that'll be through contractors and not our state staff. So with that, I think that's all that I'd planned to share, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I'll get my weird screen off for y'all.
All good. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I don't think there's any questions for you. You gonna be hanging around if there are any more that pop up?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to hear about that early hatch event and now to get your, the details on that. But also I think a lot of the speculation or wonder was what the weather the next few weeks that you guys experienced down there was going to do to that early hatch and if it would have any impact. So I think I'm not putting you on the spot. I know it's probably pretty early to determine that, but it'll be interesting to see what you guys see as a result of that.
Yep. And what I'm hearing today from some emails was that right now today is supposed to be about the time where we could see natural hatch. So
Okay. And there was a question that just came in from Phil Lewis. Was the lampshade trap placed at the base of the tree by chance?
I believe all the lampshade traps that were placed were around breast height.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all we got, Matt. So thanks again. Appreciate it.